are Knit3 Together, located in Palmer, Alaska. I'm Jennifer. I'm one of the three of Knit3 Together, and doing the camera work is Gail, and behind us is Ginny, who's working on another dyeing project. But we are here in Gail's kitchen today to kind of show you an introduction to dyeing and really how we started. We started taking classes at one of our local yarn shops and just fell in love with the process. So one of the easiest way to dye yarn at home, or quite honestly, we dye yarn outside at my house in the summertime. So one of the easiest ways to dye yarn at home, I feel, is kettle dyeing. So what you need is you need a place, some kind of vessel to put your dye and your warm water in. Again, this is something that you're not going to use for food. Again, so you want to make sure, hit the local thrift store, get some junky pot that you don't use anymore. That becomes your magic dyeing pot. So the first thing that we do is we soak the skeins in a water and vinegar solution. The reason that you use an acid is so that it opens up the wool fibers so that the dye can adhere almost to the wool fibers and become part of the yarn. So here I have 2 skeins, mini skeins actually, that we have soaked in a vinegar water solution. And this pot, I've been dyeing the same colorway over and over again. So you might see that it's a little bit of a purplish gray. I am going for a silver gray and I don't want to waste any dye. So what I'm going to do is just first put in my dye mixture. Sorry, I can't tell you any of our super secret recipes, but I can tell you that what we do first is, and this is super hot, so I'm going to put it down. What we do is you measure out your dye powder, and then you add warm water, shake it up a little bit, kind of like stirring for Kool-Aid. You want to make sure that all your particles are dissolved. And then I'm going to take, because I know our ratios, I'm going to take about half of this quart jar, so about a pint, into the pot. Again, make sure you're not going to use this for any food when you're done. Mix it up a little bit, make sure you don't see any granules of dye. You can tell, well, it might be a little bit hard with the pink ladle, but this is going to be a silvery gray. And then this is how easy this is. You just take your skeins and drop them in. And you can see right away, if you kind of scoop up your skein, that it's starting to turn a beautiful silvery gray. Now what we do is I just let this sit so that the dye can soak in. The longer you let it sit, the more beautiful, intense color you're going to have, depending on your mixture. And then when you feel happy with your color, you take it out, and here's a finished skein. And you can see that it has this beautiful silvery gray, a little bit of light gray, and that's how we get one of our colorways. We're actually working on our advent calendars right now. And that is how you kettle dye. So now we've let these mini skeins sit inside of our magic dyeing pot, and I feel like I can see a lot of the silver gray coming through on the yarn, but one thing you can do to make sure that the color is set is that you could just let the dye clear out, and what that means is that when you ladle it up, it becomes clear, or you can see that the water is clear. That means that the yarn has soaked up the majority of the dye, and that means it's probably set. But because I like to just be super careful about things, I actually take this out of the kettle and then I microwave it. I know that sounds horrible, but that intense heat will solidify your dye, and it really eases my mind that it's really in there so that your dye won't run when you wash your project. So, oh my, look at this mess. So sometimes this happens, and this is the reason why we put zip ties on our yarn, because look at how easy it is to kind of find the skein that you're working with. So this was Ginny's idea, to put zip ties on the yarn to carry it out, and look at that, much easier. So it's a nice lukewarm water now, and what I'm gonna do is just gently squeeze it. You never wring out yarn like you would wring a towel. You don't twist, you don't wanna damage the fibers. So I just gently kind of squeeze that water out, not too much. It's gonna have plenty of time to air dry. A lot of times we actually set yarn to dry in front of Gail's fireplace. So it takes a long time to dry, which is okay. It gets nice and puffy and beautiful. All right, so what I do next is I just come over to the microwave. We found a special super cheap microwave, I believe, at a thrift shop, right? At a thrift shop, because I would not feel comfortable cooking all this plastic and acid dyes in the microwave that I use at home. for food. So we have a pie plate that we only use for dyeing yarn. We cover it up with plastic. Now some people, and we have in the past, wrapped up each individual skein in plastic, but the purpose of microwaving the yarn is to just make sure that you steam it. So we figured it was a lot less plastic and quite honestly easier just to cover the pie plate with plastic. And then, oopsie, what I do is just stick it in there. I microwave it for 2 minutes, and then I take the plastic off and flip the skein. Be careful, it's super hot. Flip the skein, recover it in the same plastic, and then microwave it again for 2 minutes. After that, you rinse your yarn and let it soak in a mild detergent. Not even a, detergent might be too harsh. So kind of yarn soak that you can get at your local yarn shop, or a really, really mild dish soap. And you really only need a drop or two. And we just rinse them out in a plastic container and let them soak, and that helps get some of the vinegar smell out of your yarn. We also like this eucalyptus that you can find either on Amazon or your local yarn shop. Support your local yarn shop. I'm sure they have some of these rinses for when you're done dyeing. Then we let it air dry, and they turn into beautiful, fluffy, wonderful skeins. So after your yarn has dried for, we usually give it several days, you end up with this beautiful puffy skein of whatever color you chose to dye. And we went ahead and twisted this up in a hank, but I'm gonna go ahead and untwist it. Sorry, Gail, she just twisted it up. Where you can see all of the work from you and your magic dye pot. There are different shades. This was the gray, but there are different shades of some darker gray, some lighter gray, even almost some white in there. And that just makes knitting fun when the yarn isn't all one color. You never know what's coming up next. And it makes beautiful variegated, little bit variegated, more, what would I say, tonal? Cool. More of a tonal yarn. So there you go, dyeing lesson 101.